Today, we are diving into season 5, where we see Carrie get her book deal and her big publishing deal.
You can't just be a writer, you have to be an influencer.
Just trying to kind of like exist with our children in the world.
I was really emotional watching this scene.
Welcome to Help Me Own Whore, the money podcast that's more Dior than Dow Jones. I'm Ellie.
And I'm Claire, and each week we discuss how money shows up in some of our favourite pop culture, from the classic to the nostalgic to the contemporary.
Today, we are diving into season 5, which is actually one of the shorter seasons. It's the shortest. We only have 8 episodes of season 5, largely because Sarah Jessica Parker was pregnant for this season. But we still have plenty that we can discuss when it comes to money and all things Sex and the City ladies.
Definitely. It's a really important transitional series. I think it sets the scene for some of our final storylines. So we have like Miranda finally realizing how she feels about Steve towards the end of the series. We have Charlotte getting divorced like properly and then meeting Carrie. We have also Carrie kind of growing up a little bit.
And they're actually all single for quite a lot of this series, and obviously we've got like different characters that come along on the way, but it is quite unusual because Carrie is single for the most part of the series, which is a bit of a contrast to where we were before and after this season. So I think there are lots of things to kind of get into, and it's a really big season as well for her, like professionally, which I think is quite interesting. It's definitely something we can talk about, because it's where we see Carrie get her book deal and her big publishing deal, which kind of changes the trajectory, I think, for her story or her depiction as being a bit, I guess, scrappy and a bit useless with money. There's very much this idea that like this changes the game financially for her.
Yeah, we said last episode that what she has in her corner, like she's got this really difficult financial situation, but what she has is she's got professional clout. She's got like recognizability. You can turn that into money. Might take a while for it to materialize. It's not as sort of instantaneous as marrying a very rich doctor and then divorcing him, but it is something, and it's something that we do see her putting to good use. Although, as with so many things, it is kind of put into her lap. She's actually avoiding her editor because she is really late delivering a column. She's past deadline because she can't think of anything to write about. She's feeling cynical. She doesn't really want to go out on any date, and she is sat playing a game with Charlotte where they're each facing a different direction, and they have to say how many men out of 100 they would sleep with. And Charlotte has put 8 out of like 42, and Carrie sits 0. It's just finding faults with everyone, and so she's feeling a bit of like creative lull. And when your money comes from your creativity, that can feel really difficult. But luckily, our heroine, Carrie Bradshaw, as usual, doesn't really have to deal with any of the difficult stuff, because her editor happens to be one of the people who walks past, and Charlotte's like, oh no, you look so angry. And then he comes over and starts talking to them. And he says that the reason he's been trying to get in contact is that a big publishing house want to offer her a book deal. And so it's 2 editors, one played by Issa Daris, Courtney, and then I can't remember the actress or the character's name for the other one, but an equally sort of famous, brilliant American actress. And they pretty much hand her a book deal on a platter. Do we know how much Carrie's book deal is?
So I tried to look into this, and I don't know where this is from, so I would say this is like an unverified figure, but there was a YouTube video I found which suggested that it's $25,000. Even today, I feel like 25 grand is quite a lot for an advance.
And she doesn't have to do very much. It's a collection of essays, columns, isn't it? So they literally say to her, just need to do a dedication and then like an introduction that sets the tone of a book. This is Carrie's most annoying season, and even that causes her like a dilemma of like, what do I want the book to say? Yeah, she does quite a lot of screaming in this series. So she screams because it's windy. She screams complaining.
And we definitely do see, I think, as a consequence of this deal, like money becomes like less of a issue for her. Like it's less of a story arc for her.
Definitely. But I think there is loads of really interesting stuff inside this inside this storyline to do with money. So obviously she, through her publisher, when she at the publishing house, she meets Jack Berger, who will go on to be like her first season 6 boyfriend. But at this point he like lets slip that he's got a girlfriend, like a serious living girlfriend. But even like right from the off, and we'll come back to this because it becomes an issue like next season, next episode for us. But he's written a book. It's really interesting to see the contrast between like how you feel when you've got the offer, and it's all really exciting and you're going to be it's going to be this big next step in your career, and then how you feel so quite jaded a year later, it hasn't performed the way that you do.
And also just from the process, because I mean, I don't know about your experience with it, but I completely relate to that like excitement and the elation of like getting the book deal and the offer. But my gosh, like the process is hard. And I particularly was writing the book in my first trimester of my pregnancy with my son. And oh my gosh, it was so hard. If you take away the fact that I felt awful for all of it, then that side, it was still like just staring at a page, and you then feel this like pressure and the excitement kind of disappears. It's really about like, oh my gosh, like I've got to perform, I've got to commit, I made this commitment, I've got to put something down and deliver something, and it's really hard.
We have to talk about the fact that writing books is not well paid.
I mean, I think I got maybe 10,000 in total for the written and the audio.
Yeah.
But when you look at how long that took me, oh my gosh. But I mean, how much did you get paid for your books?
So I got 15 for my first one, but I was including audio. And then for the journal, it was 7.5. And then 10 for my third book. And then actually I submitted a proposal last year and got an offer of 5, and I decided that it wasn't worth writing. I couldn't afford to write the book that I wanted to write for an advance of 5,000, because there's so much. It was a book about kind of ADHD and money, and I would want to pay like contributors. I don't have all the expertise. I would have wanted to pay contributors. I would have needed to take so much time away from work to research, and that's not even including kind of all the time that you have to invest. And with non-fiction books, quite often you will have to agree to a blackout period in terms of work and PR that you do for other brands. You could be working at a massive loss, and I think it's a big consideration. And certainly my perception before I wrote my first book was, if you've written a book, you've made it.
Yeah.
And it's just so not the case.
No, I think as well, from what I understand, and like it was my experience too, that it's just such a different world. And I know that like when Carrie was writing this book like 20, 30 years ago, like the internet wasn't what it is now. Like we didn't have Kindles, we didn't have ebooks, we didn't have so much access to content. So I don't doubt that you got paid more then, to be honest. I imagine that you definitely did get paid a lot more. And I also think that there will be people today, like celebrities, getting paid loads to write books because they will just shell copies. Like it will get sold, but then they also have to pay their ghostwriters, because most of the time they're being ghostwritten as well. So I don't imagine they make as much as it sounds like they make a lot of the time. But I do think that there's a real misconception about like it being this golden ticket, writing a book to career success.
And don't get me wrong, there is a halo effect to having written a book. It's a great calling card for your work. You quite often get a lot of work, like speaking work or brand work or whatever, off the back of having written a book, especially if it's something that's quite in vogue.
Yeah.
However, or you can build a great campaign around it, like in Heritocracy and Eliza Philby's book. She's built the most incredible campaign around that, and I would imagine has made a lot more money from all of the other work that she's got from being such a brilliant authority on such a timely subject. But also, you know, the way that the publishing industry works, and increasingly, and this is not within the powers of editors, even commissioning editors who are making the offers, is that all of the resource goes into a smaller and smaller and smaller pool of authors. And then everyone else kind of left with what's left.
Yeah.
But the problem is that it's not just the size of the advance that you're getting. Your advance is going to be reflective of how much the publishing house are going to invest in your book. Yeah, this is things like publicity, marketing. And unless you are one of that very small pool of authors, you're going to have to do all of your own PR, all of your own marketing. So, I had conversations with my agent where it's just like, this is going to be a full-time job for which you're going to be paid not very much money. And is it going to be worth it to you?
Yeah.
And no matter how much you want to write a book, sometimes there's not a point in your life where you can do that.
No, it's like a huge commitment of time and energy. And I have noticed that a lot as well about the marketing budgets being like really decreased. And like a lot of the time, I think now that a lot of publishing houses are kind of relying on authors having their own platform to be able to sell, and that taking the pressure off them having to do it.
I don't think you can get a book deal unless you've got loads of followers on social media.
No,
I think it's really hard. You'd have to have a really good, in fact, yeah, for non-fiction, for sure.
Yeah.
For fiction, maybe if you've got an incredible manuscript.
I do wonder, like, I know we've seen these like kind of unicorn cases where it has happened over the last few years where an author completely takes off and the internet like goes wild with it. But having kind of no profile whatsoever must make it extremely difficult for you now to get even a fiction book out there and kind of to the masses, unless you kind of hit on like a real lucky streak almost.
Yeah.
And you just get the right people onto it at the right time on the videos that go viral.
Dolly Alderton, she was like, I can be like a writer and be like in complete troll mode, curled, hunched over my desk, or I can be tits and teeth presenting it to the world, but I can't do both. I definitely can't do both on the same day.
Yeah.
And I think it really hits upon the fact that even if you're a fiction writer, you have to be a salesperson as well now. You can't just be a writer, you have to be an influencer. And the same with journalism. Like quite often you can't really just be a journalist, you have to also be an influencer.
You have to promote your own work by like, linking to the papers to get the clicks from your audience. It's like, now it's not what you signed up to when you decided to be a writer.
Absolutely. And so many people write because that's their method of communication. I find it hard even like just making videos for social media because I would rather write it out. And some people are amazing at both. I took my sons to Nadia Shireen, who's a children's author at Bath Children's Literature Festival. And her stage presence is so incredible. She had everyone in stitches. And I just thought, like, that's how this is someone who can do both.
Yeah.
But not everyone can do both.
No, and I think it's kind of sad that those people that were really good at doing one or the other, like, now are being kind of forced to or like required to do both because you're not able to play to your strengths there. And I feel like Carrie's probably a character that could do both. She's like the talk of the town. She's got the social network to be able to sell her book. Just a quick pause for a word from our sponsor, eToro.
You know how in Sex and the City, the girls could talk about literally anything? Sex, breakups, babies, body hair, nothing was off limits.
They even talked about money sometimes, but weirdly not really investing or growing their wealth. Like, why were they talking about their date's net worth, but never their own?
That's why we love eToro's Loud Investing initiative. It's about making investing a normal part of the group chat.
Not just a thing that men talk about while they're at golf.
We want money conversations to feel like brunch with your best mate. Honest, fun, maybe a little bit chaotic, but super helpful and real.
Exactly. And with eToro, investing feels social. You can learn from others and build confidence without pretending that you've read The Economist from cover to cover.
So if you've ever felt like the odd one out in money conversations, eToro is your invite to the table.
No shame, no jargon, just women investing loudly.
This episode of Help Me I'm Poor is sponsored by eToro. Search Loud Investing with eToro to find out more and join the movement.
And just so we're clear, everything we talk about here is for information and education only. It's not financial advice, personal recommendations, or an offer of any kind. Always do your own research.
eToro is a multi-asset investment platform. The value of your investments may go up or down, and your capital is at risk. Carrie is awful to Samantha in this series. There's blowjob gate with the UPS guy where she like jumps to judge her really quickly. And I guess if we're just talking about Samantha, we can find a segue very smoothly into our second like talking point of this series, which is that Miranda has had a baby. He's born at the end of series 4, which means that he only really becomes a character in this series. But the biggest thing is like the change to Miranda's life. Yeah, and Samantha is not on board with this to begin with.
You can see that Miranda is like obviously going through this huge adjustment, and to be honest, I don't feel like any of them are like hugely sympathetic to it or understanding, but like particularly Samantha, like it just feels like she's a bit almost resentful of like the change.
She's actually my favourite character, but her hatred of children is one of the things I don't really like that much about her. But it all kind of comes to a head in episode 6, which is called Critical Condition. And this is where like it sort of opens with Miranda trying to get ready while Carrie's like on the phone to her talking about something relatively trivial. I was really emotional watching this scene because I identify with this feeling so much of like, she says on the phone, Brady's been up all night screaming and now I've got to go to work and pretend to be a lawyer. And I like recognize that feeling so much of sort of looking in the mirror, even once your children have gone to their childcare, looking in the mirror at like what your domestic role has done to you. Yeah. Even just over the last 24 hours, you know, if you're sort of like haven't had time to shower or whatever, and thinking like, how do I turn that person that I can see in the mirror into someone that people want to listen to and someone that people respect? Yeah. And also, how do I turn that person into like who I think I really am? That scene, I felt really upset watching it, like of just having that recognition of how hard it is to be like someone who takes their career really seriously and someone who wants to be the best mother that they can.
Yeah. And I think something that this kind of talks to as well, and particularly that kind of conflict almost that we see, or this like lack of understanding of like mother and the kind of child-free Samantha, is something that I feel like has really increased recently in like society. Like there's a real like narrative like that almost pitches one against the other and like really puts women kind of in a camp as to like, I am the one with the child, I am the mother, versus like literally like against you as the child-free people. And like you say, like there's this impression that people that are child-free like don't want anything to do with children, they hate children, like they don't want children in their spaces, like they want to have adults only zones, like children should not be allowed on planes and shouldn't go into pubs and things. And then you've got this group of mothers, which admittedly both of us are, where we're just trying to kind of like exist with our children in the world, and I guess consider our children to be people. Like, you know, don't get me wrong, there are times where I would love to like leave my son at home and go on a plane without him or go to the pub without him, but like that's just not the reality. There have been some scenarios recently where it has felt like really as though those without children just aren't even trying to comprehend what it's like trying to juggle the commitment of having a child to look after with the time that's required to be with them, and then also like trying to take time away from them to kind of go to a wedding, and then the time off work as well, because work commitments are another thing that you have to lay on top of child commitments. Everyone that has a child has also not had a child, so in a way it is easier to remember what it's like. But people that haven't got children often have never had children, so I think sometimes they're just not that willing, or like they try always, and this is obviously not okay for everybody, but don't always try to empathize with how challenging it can be and just think, well, you know, you chose to have a child.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. And we do see in this series, like Miranda is doing her best for her child not to inconvenience her friend.
Yeah.
And also she's like, just think of the car seat as like a big handbag. And it's really painful to watch, because I definitely felt like that, where I felt I had to like minimize my child so that my friends would still see me as the same person. And I had a baby at 25, and none of my friends really then had children until at least 5 years later, which you know, I had to bend myself into that shape quite a lot. And I feel like, you know, as like a 36-year-old woman, Miranda certainly shouldn't be having to like do that.
Yeah. I'm actually quite shocked by like the fact that they are 36 and like that they still seem like they're all so, I guess, reluctant to kind of accept that she's got a baby, to adapt to it. It's like quite, I mean, I think it's quite unusual, because even now, like 36 is above average age for having a child, and this is 20 odd years ago. So
Yeah.
I feel like it wouldn't have been that unusual.
What started as a really good thing of like people who are child-free by choice feeling left out of these kind of traditional narratives and blueprints, where the assumption is that you'll get married and have children, and that's what all of the content is tailored towards. And, you know, why isn't there something for people who have made a different choice? And I think that there should always be space for that. I think the choice not to have children is really legitimate. And actually, I adore my children. I would never change anything. But I could see a life, like a parallel life,
Yeah.
where I would have been happy child free, like that. And that doesn't mean that I wish that that's what I had, but I'm just saying that I'm not one of these people who's like, oh, I don't think that you can have a fulfilling life without having children. But some of the, again, because we see the most extreme stuff, some of the child-free content that I see is spiteful.
Yeah.
I saw something recently that I think it just hits the nail on the head, which said that you can choose to have a life with no children, but you cannot choose to have a world with no children. That's not your choice.
I think the good thing is, at least in this episode, that we do see that once Samantha looks after Brady and he kind of screams and she understands like what on earth it is that it's like, that it does change her perspective a bit. But I mean, it's a series that I guess a lot of people don't like, and I think part of that is because it's quite short, but I feel like there is a lot to like about it. So I'm really glad that we've kind of been able to pull some gems out from it. But
yeah, I think it's got some really great episodes.
That's all we've got time for today. So on that note, thank you so much for watching. We hope you are loving our Sex and the City miniseries. Please do follow us, subscribe, give us a like, give us a review, drop us a DM if you've got anything that you would like to chat about, give us any feedback that you've got. We are at Help Me I'm Podcast, and we also have a Substack with the same name, which we send out weekly on a Sunday, talking about all sorts of things, pop culture and money.